And so, good morning, my friends. If you don't know me, I am Reverend Elisha Christopher. I am the spiritual director here at this Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Cruz. My pronouns are they and them, and my ancestors came to this country from really all over the world, but in the last, 4 or 5 generations, they immigrated to this country from Ireland, Scotland, Austria, and Holland. I want to begin by saying thank you to Gitanjali for stepping up and stepping in and speaking for me last week. I was so grateful for not only for your willingness to step in, but also for the message that came through. And I really thank you. I had to go down to Southern California last week. My grandfather is currently in process of making his transition. And I had spent much of the last 2 weeks with my family as we've been moving into hospice care and preparing for this time. So I'm grateful to be back, and I'm grateful to know that we were all held together with Gitanjali last week. So gratitude. So, as we know, today for many is Easter Sunday. If you're a cannabis enthusiast, it's also 420. So may it be a high and or holy day, which one you choose. It's all God, so enjoy. Our theme for the month of April across Centers for Spiritual Living is fertilizing our future. And we have these shared themes that we share across our global community. And I'm actually part of the team who writes and brings these themes together. And I actually wrote this month's themes, which is interesting because I was writing this all back last August, trying to be in the mind of what we need to hear and know this April. And it's interesting that we chose this theme, fertilizing the future. And here we are as I look around our nation and our world and our community, and it seems a whole lot more like we're composting the present. And that, I don't know if any of you have ever made compost or gardening, but there's a process called hot composting where you just chop it all down, put it all together, throw all the right ingredients in there, and just keep stirring it up, and the temperature rises, and all the stuff breaks down really quickly and turns into nutrients. That becomes the fertilizer. That becomes the necessary ingredients for the next harvest, for the future. And so it's interesting that as I've been contemplating this idea, fertilizing the future, realizing that maybe we can use this as a context for ourselves, that what we are walking through together is really the breakdown of an old paradigm. We are composting all the things that no longer serves us, even the things that have grown and flourished and served us for a time have come through their season, right? And all of that which no longer serves, all that which is falling away is breaking down, is composting, is becoming fertile soil, right? And I appreciated one of the things that Gitanjali said last week about looking out at the situation of the world, of remembering that and knowing that God is all there is, that everything is perfect. Everything is always in absolute divine perfection. And I appreciated your note of this is a need-to-know basis between God and us. Though we don't always have to know how this is perfect, but we do have to trust that it is perfect. That was my big takeaway from your talk last week, so thank you. Because if we can hold that context, we can remember that there is always something greater at work in our lives, in our community, in our nation, and in the world. There is always something greater at work. There is always the expansion of the universe. There is always the current of evolution. There is always the arc of the universe that is aided and guided to bend towards the good, right? And so if that's our context, here we have this beautiful Easter metaphor, right, about resurrection. And I think it's always fascinating to me how pagan Christians really are. You know, we have Easter, which is the first Sunday after the first full moon of spring. This sounds very much like an earth-based religion to me. right? That we're paying attention to the cycles and the seasons, and then we place this story and this metaphor at this particular time of year, when this death and resurrection metaphor is quite useful to us when we come into the fullness of spring and we finally out of the dark days of winter. We're finally out of the days of the bare naked branches, and we're seeing the sprouts, we're seeing the flowers, we're seeing the possible rising up from what was a barren landscape in some ways. Right? And so how beautiful that this story of death and resurrection shows up at this particular time of year. That every year we have this cycle of remembering. We can look to the seasons that say every time that things die off, they become the sustenance. They become the source. They become the fertilizer that feeds the possible that rises up next. Right? All these beautiful spring flowers that are popping up everywhere are fertilized by all of the leaves that died many months ago, that broke down and been absorbed into the ground. Right? And so what if we can use that for ourselves as a great source of spiritual nourishment as we watch so much seeming to be breaking away, falling away, dying, withering? We can remember that things are also growing up and sprouting and emerging forward. Because again, here we are in this moment where all of the necessary conditions are rising up in our communities, causing great social movements, causing great collective conscious cohesion about the new story that we are standing for and that we are seeking. And that this month our theme is about fertilizing the future, about visioning into what's possible, about looking to the more. And all the stuff that's coming up in our world and in our nation and our community, all the stuff that is causing us pain, all the stuff that is pushing against us, it's giving us new context and whole new stories, whole new visions, whole new possibilities are starting to rise up. And we're moving through this very interesting time where there's a lot going on that we do not, that I personally, I'll just say me, that I do not like. There's a lot of things that are happening that I do not like. I do not like the fact that we had to close our building and we are moving around, that we're here and there we're doing all the different things related to what happened with our building on Felt Street. I do not like it, but it is what it is. It's the circumstance. And so the question becomes, rather than saying, I do not like this, I'm going to resist it, the question becomes, what could we dream of that we never dreamed of before if we weren't forced into this situation? Right? What if we haven't been cast out of our place, but we've been cracked open to a new possibility? What if we've just hatched? And we've been sitting on this egg of possibility for decades, and it's cracked open. And now we're a community who's out on the streets. Now we're a community who's showing up at different churches, at different places, at different events happening in town. We're no longer gathering inside of a little hidden space on the corner of town. We are now a people who are everywhere. Right? And that invites us to reinvent ourselves, to become something new. And that same thing is happening in this nation. I do not like one little bit every single thing that keeps coming out of this government that has no vision and seeks to destroy and tear down and take away and create fear. I do not like it. But what I recognize is what I'm seeing as a result of that is the collective consciousness of this nation waking up and saying, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. Getting out weekend after weekend, billions, millions of people marching on the streets saying, this no more, this shall not be. And I'll tell you, friends, yes, this administration is doing a lot of horrible things. Our this nation's been doing a lot of horrible things for a long time. It's just risen to the surface enough that we are waking up and changing our minds and saying, this no more. Right? And in that, I believe a vision is being birthed. A vision of inclusion, a vision of diversity, a vision of spiritual magnificence, a vision of a nation that cares for its people. And so the contrast is waking us up. And I think about the Easter story, the part that's been really resonating for me this week is the sort of pre-final dinner, pre all that. You know, Jesus is in the garden contemplating the crucifixion ahead of him. And there's a whole period in his deep prayer where he reaches out to his higher consciousness or God the Father, or whatever we're going to call it in the story, and says, take this from me. I do not want to do this. And how many of us are in whatever particular situation we're in, where whatever it is that's in front of us, we don't want. Take this from me. And yet, it's yours. It's been handed to you. It's been handed to me. This moment in history has been handed to each one of us. And we can't just give it back and say, no, thank you. Right? We have to keep walking the walk. We have to keep moving through the path that is unfolding in front of us, regardless of where we see it's going, saying, I don't want to go that way. But that's the path. And one of the things that we know, one of the things we've been chanting and singing for months and months and months, is you don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. But what that means is you have to trust the way, find the way, feel the way, follow the way. When the way is laid out in front of you and Spirit says, go this way, we go, hey, but is there another road? Is there potentially another possibility I could choose? And God says, this is the path. Your intuition, Spirit, the conditions say, this is the path. And how often do each one of us in any various different aspects of our lives, the clear path shows up and we go, nope. And then what happens? The resistance, the struggle, the things not working the way we want them to. We exhaust ourselves looking at every other possible path when the path is already laid out. And that our work, our deep spiritual work, is to begin to trust deeply in that part of ourselves that knows more than we do. Because I guarantee you, Elisha's little conscious mind has lots of thoughts about how things should go. And then there's a higher wisdom self that always knows better. And we've got to get out of the way of thinking that we know better and learn how to listen to something deeper. Because there is a deep and powerful abiding presence that is offering us its wisdom and guidance in every moment. And I can imagine, we're just going to use this Easter story because it's here today. I can imagine a person like Jesus in this story approaching that cross, walking up that horrible experience of being torn down every step of the way, realizing that this too is for the good, that something great comes of this terrible experience. And so let that be our resurrection metaphor today. That whatever trials we are walking through, maybe they are for us. Right? Maybe whatever it is we're walking through, whatever it is we're struggling with, whatever pain we've had to overcome, what if that is the necessary ingredients for your awakening, for your enlightenment, for your activation, for your yes? You know, we all know that we don't necessarily make the big leaping decisions when we're really comfortable. Right? It's when the stuff hits the fan. It's when it breaks down. It's when it's not working anymore. It's when it gets so painful and uncomfortable that we suddenly get pushed out of the situation, or we finally take the leap that we weren't ready to take before. And that leap is where we learn to defy gravity. It's where we learn to fly, to rise above the circumstances, right? To walk on the water of our circumstances and rise above that which might drown us if we looked at it a different way. Because it's all about the perspective. It's all about how we look at and how we deal with what we are moving through. We don't get to choose what comes our way, but we do get to choose how we be with it. right? And that's the huge work. That's the huge invitation and opportunity that this moment, this grand moment in our lives, in our nation, in our community, in the world, there is a great opportunity here that is inviting each one of us to become something more than we've ever been before, and to invite the collective of us to become something more than we've ever been before. And that's going to be our resurrection and ascension story. Right? As a community, we're in an in-between place. Old things are breaking down. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of questions. What's next? It's the rising up. It's the expanding into the new story. A whole New Testament, if you will. Right? And so we get to create a new story with what is. And so maybe take this particular Sunday, this moment, as an opportunity to say, what am I going to let go of? What am I going to sacrifice? What am I going to put on the altar? What can I let go, knowing that if I do, it becomes the nutrients for where I'm going, the fuel for the journey, right? There's a power in letting go. It's what allows us to rise into new possibilities. So that's our story. And we're going to stick to it. Right? And let's breathe. So take a deep breath in. And let go. If it's comfortable, go within, close your eyes, take another deep breath. And let's do that one more time. Deep breath in. And let it go. My friends, we are unlimited. Each one of us. We are part of the great infinite one. That one that truly is the one life. The one life that is greening throughout all of creation. The one who is shining the sun, who is growing the trees, who is blossoming in the flowers, who's buzzing in the bees. One life, intricately and intimately interwoven into every interaction, participating in every possibility, living and breathing in every person. God, the one life, the universe, the infinite, is all that there is. And that one life is always expanding. That one life is always evolving. That one life is always becoming more and more and more of itself. And so let us remember today that each one of us has the opportunity to be part of that greening of life, sharing our fruits with all of creation. Realizing that everything that falls away, all that breaks down, all that no longer serves, frees us. It opens us up. It makes room for the new, for the next, for the possible. Knowing that all of our struggles, all of our pain, all of the grief, it nurtures our souls. It changes us. It activates us. It wakes us up. And so let us know that even as we walk through the trials of the moment, that there is a path before us that leads to our resurrection, that leads to the rising up, that leads to the more, that leads to the possible, that leads to the beautiful, that leads to a world that works for everyone, that leads to a nation that works for all people. So know that that's the road that we are on. Even though there are trials, there are tribulations, there are struggles, there is pain, there is confusion, we can name it, we can recognize, we can say, yes, it's all here. But these are just the twists and turns on the path of our becoming. and that something is calling us deeper than we've ever been before. Something is calling us higher than we've ever been before. Something is calling us into our truth. Something is calling us into our power. Something is calling us to rise above, realizing that nothing can hold us down. When we let go, when we let God, when we trust the way, we open ourselves to the miracles. We open ourselves to the demonstrations, and let us be a people who can walk on the water of these conditions and show others not to get drowned in the moment. Let our light shine. Let us rise above and remember who we are. And so with that, let's take another deep breath in and let it go. Another deep breath. Breathe in. Let go. One more. And I seal these words by saying, and so it is. Amen. Ashe. Aho. Alhamdulillah.